What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Tape. And today I present to you my post-combine 3-round NFL mock draft. So we've got 100 picks to talk about, plus some combine, post-event thoughts on who's made themselves some money, who's moved up the board, and maybe who moved down the board with a little bit of some disappointing numbers, or maybe by their decision not to test. So lots to talk about in today's video. And real quick, I do want to just go ahead and plug the website at the top of the screen. Great time to become a subscriber. Use the promo code DRAFT, and it is free for the entire first month. Also, while we're going through this mock, leave me your thoughts down below. As we're going pick by pick, who goes too high, who goes too low, who's your favorite squad, and what'd you think of the haul that I gave your team? One last note before we get into this video. I know I talk fast, but today, right after this, I'm going to literally go present the cashier's check and whatnot and go get the keys. I'm closing on a house right after this. So if I blow through these picks a little bit faster than you would normally like, feel free to DM me. It's literally free of charge. So if you want to hear me break down my picks, why I did my thought process the way I did, feel free to shoot me a DM. My Twitter is literally what is right below my name. So with all the house cleaning done, let's jump into this 3-round mock, 100 picks worth of analysis, starting with Fernando Mendoza going number 1. We don't need to talk about this pick anymore. Really, the draft starts at 2. New York Jets. I have not done this. I have done this a couple times before, and I haven't really moved off of this idea, but especially after what he did at the Combine, I'm going to go with Sonny Styles here with the number 2 overall pick. I've been saying for a few months now he's the best non-quarterback in this class, and then he puts up 43.5-inch vertical, almost 11-inch broad. I mean, the guy is an absolute alien. So it's an off-ball linebacker at 2, and that's a little tough to sell when it comes to position value. But we have so many picks in this draft for the Jets that it's shades of that Lions draft from a few years ago where Jack Campbell, okay, you get him little at 18, like that's a little rich for a linebacker. Running back at 12, okay. Sam Laporta then to start the second round. You're drafting all these low position guys or low position value positions, tight end, linebacker, running back, but they end up being like some of the best players at those. Brian Branch, then safety at 44, but they all end up being kind of like home run picks in regards to like Laporta is one of the best tight ends. Gibbs is a top 3 running back. Brian Branch, one of the best versatile safeties / slot corners in the league. So it ended up being a win from that standpoint. So yes, off to a little bit of a rough position value start to this draft for the Jets, but we have so many picks that just look at the haul at the end of it, and I'd be hard-pressed to think you're not excited if you're a Jets fan. Not to pat myself on the back too much, that will then lead us to the Arizona Cardinals. Let's go with the other Ohio State linebacker. Reese was much more selective in what he did at the Combine, but still size, weight, and then he ran, a 4.46 40 right after Sonny Styles did the same thing. So absolutely freaky alien. And just like the Jets, I could have easily gone Reese at 2, and then I probably would have just gone Styles here at 3. So you could easily flip these 2 picks. We will be able to get an edge rusher later on for the Jets. But with that Jermaine Johnson, Tamondre Sweat trade, I could see where they go for the pass rush upside of Reese. But again, I think Styles is the best non-quarterback in this class. So I decided to go BPA with how I see the board. And then for the Cardinals at 3, they still are kind of trying to figure out this pass rush situation. Josh Sweat's a good guy, but could you get a true number 1 and have Sweat be the number 2 edge rusher off of that? I think that would be ideal. Bernard Robinson still kind of kicking the tires on what that looks like as a former first-round pick. Walter Nolan, interior guy, so he doesn't really factor into the edge equation. So this is a defense that needs better play at linebacker and at edge. So I wonder if Reese is kind of the 2 birds with 1 stone approach here. Tennessee Titans, after getting Jermaine Johnson, you still could go David Bailey or Reuben Bain Jr. We will probably explore that in future mocks. But something I have not done in any of my mocks is, what if they went Jeremiah Love here at 4? And I love the receiver that was available for them at the top of the second round. I think that's pick 36. 37. So let's just simply put, I love the supporting cast I was able to put together around Cam Ward. So this is a team that can post June 1st. Tony Pollard, he also could be a trade candidate, get younger, cheaper, frankly, better at that position. I know it's a number 4 overall pick. There's question marks of what's going to happen with guard / what's going on with JC Latham. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? And I know it's, especially after seeing Ashton Jeanty a year ago, not a great offensive line, drafted running back early. It's kind of a hard sell for that. But also the quarterback play was a lot worse. So I'm gonna trust Brian Daboll. Plus, this is a really nice pass catching weapon out of the backfield. I know Spears brings some of that to the table. I know Pollard can do that too, but I really like the big playability and the dynamism that Love brings as a weapon long term for Cam Ward. And that's the other thing you have to factor into this. Spears, I don't think is like a headline piece long term. Maybe he's on this team for a few more years after the expiration of his contract. And Pollard's not on this team in 5 years. So I like the idea of a backfield being Love and Ward long term. Get to the Giants. This is kind of like where I'm setting the floor for Sonny Styles. If he gets here, I mean, John Harbaugh, part of the organization in Baltimore that makes the trade for Roquan Smith. This is kind of where I'm setting with the post-combine stuff, where I'm setting the floor for Sonny Styles. But since he's already off the board, I'm going to go with CeCe Moinoa. there were a lot of big standouts for the offensive line, and I don't think Moino was like the big winner or anything like that. But the arm length checked out. He's a tackle from like an arm length perspective. He still looks like a guard. But either way you spin it here for the Giants, they need a right tackle right now, depending on what happens with Jermaine Illuminor. He also could be a guy you can just move inside anyways. Or you let someone else pay him as a low 30s age tackle, but let someone else pay him double-digit millions of dollars a year, and then you just draft a similar body type and a similar type of player in a lot of ways, honestly, in Francis Moinoa. So I'm going to do that here at 5, and then we'll go receiver a little bit later on in this class for the New York Giants. So then that takes us into the Cleveland Browns, and I decided, with Moinoa off the board, I could see a world where that might be just enough to get Spencer Fano off right behind him, get a little bit of a run on these offensive tackles. Also, Fano was this guy at the combine who, again, kind of looks like an interior offensive lineman when you just see him moving through the combine drills, but does have just enough arm length to check out at tackle. A little bit on the leaner side, but what I will say is the Browns have this unique opportunity to draft a guy like Spencer Fano, and it's kind of a clean slate for this team where all 5 of their starters on the offensive line are about to be a free agent. So Fano got work at center after the drills at Indy. He might make more sense at guard, but he played college tackle. So, no matter what ends up happening for this offensive line for the Browns this offseason, whatever happens next offseason, I'm very confident Spencer Fano is a starter for this team, one way or another, whether it's tackle, guard, or center. He's a starter for this team. And what I will say, yes, you don't normally want to draft a guard or a center at 6, but now we've kind of hit the mark where guards are making $20+ million on the open market if you're a really good one. And Tyler Linderbaum's about to kick the ceiling off the center market. He's going to get probably $20 million on the open market. If not $20 million, he's going to be knocking on the door on it. So really, we're kind of getting this point where, tackles are worth a lot of money, but there's a premium on offensive lineman. So if you've got a great one, they get paid no matter what the position is. So the Browns have a huge overhaul ahead of them on the offensive line. And no matter what ends up happening, what pieces are still there, Spencer Fano is a starter for this team, guard, center, tackle. So I kind of like this situation I don't know what Fano's going to truly be at the next level. I'm still calling him a tackle right now, but then you have the luxury of moving him inside if you need to. But the Browns have the opportunity where there's open doors all 5 spots. All right, let's get to the Commanders then. At pick number 7, I think one of their best outcomes possible would be David Bailey. Kind of the Von Miller role from last year, but you would just go ahead and let David Bailey be, a full-time player, quote unquote. He's a 2.5 down player. You don't love him being out there on first downs against the run, but he holds his weight enough. 251, you can play that. That's not too underweight, in a lot of ways for this modern NFL. But just for the pass rush juice, this was a pass rush that, as bad as their secondary was last year, it was also a secondary that was left out to dry by an anemic pass rush, especially with Dorrance Armstrong goes down early, the ghost of Von Miller. Jacob Martin by the end of the year looks like this guy who's like, oh, this guy kind of brings a little bit of flash. But that's how desperate it was. And that was kind of a couple flashes a game for Jacob Martin. So really just speaks to how desperate this team was for pass rush juice. And David Bailey's going to bring that and then some if he's available there at 7. So I think that's one of the best outcomes possible. Him or Ruben Bain Jr. I'd be curious to see which direction Dan Quinn and the Commanders would go there with them both available here. And speaking of Ruben Bain Jr., he's going to be the pick here at 8, especially in this Brandon Staley defense where he could play edge, but especially, a lot of nickel, you just kind of rotate him inside. And I think playing next to Brian Brzee, and then you still have Granderson plus Chase Young, assuming he comes back. Actually, did he already get an extension? He might have already gotten an extension, so apologies if I'm a little delayed on that. By the way, perfect world, Granderson and Chase Young on the edge. You'd rotate Ruben Bain inside. And then on early downs, I think Cam Jordan's kind of getting himself ready to move on to the media side of his career. And then Granderson is still starting getting up there in age, also has a pretty sizable cap, not the biggest, but it's something that for this team with this ever looming cap situation is something to monitor. So I think long term, Chase Young plus Ruben Bain, that's a pretty awesome 1-2 punch. In 3 years' time, could that be your 1-2 on the edge? I think it could. Plus, you have the flexibility of even if you get another edge rusher you really like, Ruben Bain's a guy you can collapse inside. Also, I will say Brandon Staley, I would like to see him utilize stunts and twists more if he did get a guy like Ruben Bain. Wasn't one of the top teams in regards to usage of that last year, but they did use it a bit when he was in LA. And again, that was kind of, we were on the forefront, Dan Quinn was just kind of getting his, feet wet in Dallas. And he was kind of the first guy that felt like he was really taking advantage of stunts and twists and the gamesmanship at a higher rate than most defensive coordinators. But Staley tinkered with it, and it helps when you have an Aaron Donald. But I wonder if he would fall back on that and see hey, Ruben Bain could be that similar type of player just for me in New Orleans. Just an interesting idea. Anyways, let's get on to the Kansas City Chiefs here at 9. Give them by far and away the best tight end in this class to me. Kenyon Sadiq, sub 4.40, absolutely banana land. And I just think, look, Travis Kelce, I don't know what the news is, but he should hang it up. And a lot of the retirement stuff I'm trying to keep up with. Okay, Taylor Decker's back. Okay, awesome. Landon Dickerson's back. Cool. And then it's shaping some of this stuff. But like Kelce, it's time. It's time for him to move on. But even if he does come back, you don't love taking a tight end 2 here, but for the long term, to replace Travis Kelce, the yards after the catch, the middle of the field, that safety valve for this offense, Kenyon Sadiq should be the guy to backfill that spot. And frankly, I don't know another time where the Chiefs can be picking top 10 and get the chance to get this type of skill set, 1, in the top 10, but 2, at the tight end position. So I feel like this is the right time to take advantage of that potential passing the torch opportunity from Kelce to Kenyon Sadiq. Then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals here at 10. Easy one if Caleb Downs is there. It's kind of a home run fit. The only time I don't do that is if someone like David Bailey or Ruben Bain's there. So really, for a Bengals defense that's desperate for top end talent, like it does feel like you're at a good spot where one of those 3 guys is going to make their way to you here at 10. So floor raiser here at 10, and whether it's all the time at free safety for this Al Golden defense that does live in a lot more single high, or he does play more in the box, and Jordan Battle is going to play free safety. Either way you spin it, much better tackling on the way. He's a great tight end matchup weapon, a guy who would be a great hook defender if you do decide to play him in the box. So just love how he raises the floor of that defense in Cincinnati. And a little something different here. Haven't had the chance to do this, but I was like, oh, shoot, Carnell Tate fell outside the top 10. Mid 4.5 40. We're doing this the post-combine mock. It's a little bit of an overreaction, but hey, let's have some fun here. That's what the point of a post-combine mock is, right? Carnell Tate here being the pick. He falls outside the top 10. First time that's happened in a long time in one of these mocks. And I wonder if Bobby Slowick, now granted, he's the OC. He's not the guy making the pick. But could he sell that room on, hey, that's my Nico Collins right here, man. We already got Waddle, who's awesome as a Z, but I need an X. And Carnell Tate's available. Let's go make that pick happen. And you're talking about getting a rookie contract receiver, a team with a little bit of a cap influx right now. What's going to happen with Tua? A lot of dead cap money if they do decide to move on from him. So getting cheaper and getting a number 1 receiver in the future to go with Jalen Waddle would be nice to have for especially at a cheap price point the next 4 years. So first time in a long time, Carnell Tate's fallen outside the top 10, and I wonder if the Dolphins would look at him as that number 1 X to complement Jalen Waddle. All right, pick number 12, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go with Mansour Delane here at 12. Could easily be him or Jermon McCoy. And furthermore, McCoy's going to be the pick here at 13. But Dallas needs to upgrade that secondary. Keelan Carson I liked as a day 3 swing of the bat. Chavon Ravel I'm not ready to quit on. But I think one more guy on the outside. Let Keelan Carson then Chavon Ravel battle it out for that number 2 outside corner spot. We'll move Deron Bland back inside the nickel where he is best off. And then, like I said, Jermon McCoy's going to be the pick here at 13. He is just the physical corner they don't have on this team. Darius Williams kind of vertically challenged, Emmanuel Forbes horizontally challenged, if you will, at 163 pounds. So this is your number 1 shutdown corner, gets the tough assignment week in and week out. Yes, he did not participate. Would have been great to see that, but the tape from a year ago is just simply too good to ignore here. So position of need, one of the best players available in the draft, home run fit there for the Rams. And like I've been saying the last few mocks, they just hired Tennessee's DB coach to be their DB coach, so this one feels like a layup if he's there. Doing a little something different here for the Baltimore Ravens. You can tell the PFF board has moved down Peter Woods. Normally he's, like one of the top guys up here, but it seems that Trev, and now granted, I think they're doing this off this is their consensus board. So, but yeah, the consensus board at least has made the move to Caleb Banks being DT1. That's not the case for me, but I did want to explore that, especially considering he did have a good showing at the combine, and Peter Woods, he did do any of the testing. So could that be a little disappointing? Also, a little sawed off. His arm's a little shorter than we thought. So Caleb Banks, could he be DT1? This is a Ravens team that tried to trade up to take Jordan Davis. Was going to take Jordan Davis, but then the Eagles traded up and leapfrogged them and took him at 13. So could they have a similar line of thinking? Now, I think Jordan Davis is a true nose tackle who can also play 3-tech. Caleb Banks to me is a 3-tech who, like, if you had to, you could play at nose. But I wonder if they look at this guy in a similar way of, like, there are only a handful of human beings that look and play that way. Like, there's only so many guys, 325, 330, that move the way he does and has the power in his hands that he does. And they kind of, I wonder if they had that world theory kind of going on with Jordan Davis, and I wonder if they think of Caleb Banks in a similar way. So Nnamdi Madubuike kind of up in the air. What's going to happen there? Could be an opening at 3-tech, looking for some pass rush juice. Caleb Banks could be the guy there at 14. Tampa Bay Buccaneers next up at 15. I'm going to go with Akeem Mesidor. It does feel like he's starting to gain a whole lot of momentum. I'm a little bit more tepid on Mesidor, kind of like him as a late first to early second round guy, but look, the Bucs are a team that wants to win now, and Mesidor brings a win now skill set. I worry about his power and most of his wins coming across face against offensive linemen. Don't see that happen a whole lot at the next level. That being said, he has as deep a back of pass rush moves, and he has fast, active hands. So that's a skill set that should play right away. And this is the Bucs team, like I said, that wants to win right now. Jets are next up here at 16. I have not done this yet, to the best of my knowledge, but I'm going to have Jordyn Tyson come off the board here at 16 and have him be receiver 2. Yes, the injuries are a big concern here, but we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback. But this is a team that needs another receiver to complement Garrett Wilson. You're getting arguably the best route runner in this class in Jordyn Tyson when he's healthy. And you also get a guy who can play X, right? Like Tyson to me can play X, he can play Z, or he could even be a big slot for you. I really do think the world of who the player Jordyn Tyson is, it just comes down to like where you at with the medicals. But that being said, like you play him at X, that frees up Adonai Mitchell. He probably becomes your Z. And then Garrett Wilson, moves inside to play the nickel or the slot, whatever you want to call it. That to me makes that wide receiver room fit all the right pieces. Also could be a world where Adonai Mitchell is your X and then maybe Jordyn Tyson you like more as a Z. I'm totally content with that. So you have some versatility there. So I just like how this moves the rungs within that wide receiver room to kind of fit in the right place on that ladder. So and I think 16 is a good place to take a swing of the bat, or, take a swing on Jordyn Tyson. Yes, the injury history is there. So maybe you don't want to take him at 5 if you're the Giants or at 6 if you're Cleveland. But here at 16, the upside, you're landing the best receiver in this class, in my opinion, when he's healthy. It's just he's missed close to 50% of his college games. So where do you take that guy? Middle of the first round, though, my risk appetite's much, much more there. All right, Detroit Lions. I'm going to go Colton Hood, another guy with good testing numbers, big physical corner on the outside. So another team that's just kind of physically limited at cornerback. DJ Reed, smaller corner, Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw missed all of last year, but again, 2 smaller corners drafted in the same class. So wonder if they go for the big physical type here in Colton Hood and try to get back towards more of their roots. Back when Aaron Glenn was their DC, they wanted to run man coverage a lot that first year Glenn was there. They've, especially now with Shepard as the DC, they moved more towards the zone route, but I wonder if Hood could be the guy that enables a little bit more aggressiveness and just gives them a different body type in the secondary as well. All right, let's get to the Minnesota Vikings. Real easy one here. And I know I've had Vikings fans say, hey, like Brian Flores does not like playing rookies. And I hear you. And I understand you could do some of that in free agency, but this team also doesn't have that much cap room to spend. And look, I think there's going to be, whether it's here with your first round pick or it's someone in the second or third, you're going to probably have to play one of these rookies, just given Harrison Smith, if he retires, what else is going to be, overhauled in the cornerback room. So I'm going to go Dylan Thieneman here, safety from Oregon. Yes, you're going to see 1,000 Harrison Smith comps. That's not the only reason I'm doing it here. One, I've done the Avion Terrell thing to death here in the first round. So let's explore a little something different. But I also think the type of player Dylan Thieneman is, he is above a rookie in a lot of ways. He's just played so many different positions in college, and he's a smart, cerebral player. Really, to me, improved his tackling this year. So one, the position, versatility, and alignment, and where you can line him up. Also, just like the need at safety. I think this is the opportunity. I think this is the right guy, too. Like, I understand where Flores doesn't like playing rookies, but Thieneman, to me, has a different type of mindset and NFL readiness to him than some other guys. I think the same thing is true about Avion Terrell, but I did want to throw a different name out in the mix and go with Thieneman here at 18. And speaking of Avion Terrell, I am going to do a little something different here. I thought about Avion Terrell, so that's not the direction I'm going here. I'm pulling my best Trevor Sikkema, talking up one guy and then going a different direction. But I'm going to go with Monroe Freeling. And frankly, he could probably go a whole lot higher than this. And I've heard some Browns people specifically saying Freeling might be the pick at 6. So, it starts at 6 here for Freeling. But then we got to this point of the board where I was like, oh, yeah, I want to move him up. But now that Taylor Decker's back for the Lions, that's kind of gone. So like, where is the fit? Where does Monroe Freeling move up the board? And look, I'm not saying it has to be the Carolina Panthers, but Ikem Ekwonu got hurt in the playoffs. There's a solid chance that he misses a majority, if not this entire season. I'd have to double check, but if I remember right, it was a patella tendon. So that's a pretty big injury. And he's also a guy who, coming out of NC State, is he more of a guard or a tackle? And he's been a good player. He's been a solid left tackle. But I do wonder if he is the prototypical tackle that Dave Canales could say, for the next 5 years, I want him in that spot. Also, you have their left guard right now, Damian Lewis, getting closer and closer to the age 30 mark. So could they keep Ikem Ekwonu and eventually move him inside the guard? I wonder if that's a possibility here. But I did just want to explore this. And there's also a world where they're just like, hey, Icky, you've been a serviceable left tackle. We appreciate you, but we think there's a higher ceiling. And with a smaller quarterback, we want to go for that pass rush, or pass protection, higher upside. And that's going to be Monroe Freeling. So just want to explore it here. The Ikem Ekwonu injury does make this really kind of a cloudy picture of what's going on there at left tackle. But especially if their doctors would know better than anybody, if he's in line to miss a majority, if not all of the season, left tackle is a huge need. So you kind of have to address it there. So Monroe Freeling certainly moving up the boards after his showing at the Indianapolis Combine. So trying to find the right spot for him inside the top 20. And I wonder if Carolina's it there at 19. But Panthers fans, let me know. Trust me, I'm not trying to besmirch Ikem Ekwonu. I really hope he comes back from the injury and hope he is a standout player. But do you think a move to guard could make some sense, or do you think tackle's not at all in their plans here at 19? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and what you've heard reporting around what they're looking at here in the first round. Anyways, pick number 20 for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go with Keldrick Falk. It was interesting to see some of the combine conversations around Keldrick Falk, but all in all, I think a pretty solid showing. Yes, his hips are a little stiff, and specifically, I'm talking about the Marcus Mosher tweet and some of the feedbacks back and forth around his tweet that went pretty viral. I do think his hips are a little stiff, but his ankles certainly are flexible. So he's just this interesting body type. Like, he is kind of an abnormal really good athlete. Because he's what he is athletic in, he's a special athlete. And then where he's kind of got some shortcomings, he has some shortcomings. So what to do with him is just going to be a fascinating conversation. But this is a team that, part of the reason they trade Micah Parsons is because they want to get better against the run. You bring in Quentin Williams because you want to get better against the run. So I wonder if this team would be willing to say, hey, he's 20 years old. We're willing to take the opportunity to develop this guy at the next level. He's a high-level run defender. We can play him on all 3 downs because of that. Go ahead and get him in the building. Plus, we have Jadeveon Clowney hitting free agency. Obviously, rest in peace, Marshawn Nealon. Like, we're missing Sam Williams, another free agent. We're kind of missing that early down, big body run defender to go along with Donovan Ezaraku, who's a little bit more slightly built, who brings the pass rush juice. So I'm going to go Culver Falk. Feels like a nice 1-2 punch opposite Ezaraku. And all in all, I think a pretty positive showing for Falk at the combine. And what I will say is, I was never really take Falk in the top 10 camp. But now I kind of feel like Caden Proctor, where it's gone maybe a little bit too far the other way. Falk more so than Proctor for me. But once you get to the 20s, I think he's fair game. And it's worth taking a swing of the bat of that project. I would have taken Tyree Wilson somewhere in the 20s. And obviously that hasn't worked out great. But some of these projects, it's just more about where you're talking about them in the first round versus taking them in the first round in general. Hopefully that point makes sense. Pittsburgh Steelers, I know this is where I'm going to upset a lot of Steelers fans. I seem to be the only Steelers fan that's okay with this happening. But I'm going to go Ty Simpson here at 21. I keep alternating back and forth between receiver and Ty, but we host the draft. Mike McCarthy, QB whisperer, quote unquote QB whisperer. Don't know what's going on with Rodgers. I would say he's probably back. I'm fairly confident it's going to be Ty Simpson at 21. I know a lot of Steelers fans hate this. I know it's not sexy, but I think with a solid situation around him, right? We're going to draft 2 receivers in this draft. If we continue to develop that offensive line, if McCarthy can unlock another level to that run game, maybe we even add another running back, or maybe he figures out Caleb Johnson, takes that to another gear. I do think there's a world where the Steelers provide a better situation for Ty Simpson, plus a great defense on their side. And I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback or anything like that, but for the Steelers, when was the last time we could say we had a quarterback at QB 16 or better? It's pre-elbow injury Ben Roethlisberger, which was 2019 when that injury happened. So, we're talking about going on 8 years since we had league average quarterback play. So, I think Ty Simpson could do that with the right situation. So, it's not sexy, but get cheap at a big important position. You bring Rodgers back. It's a solid situation in all for Ty Simpson. And I've said this a couple of times too. I do wonder if Mike McCarthy squints and sees Ty Simpson as shades of Dak Prescott. Especially since 6'2", 200 and just under 15 pounds at the combine. We're talking similar-esque body types for Dak Prescott. So Dak might be a little bit thicker, but Ty also runs a little bit better, at least at this point in Dak's career. So I don't know. I know most Steelers fans are going to hate this, but don't worry. I think I'm hitting on all the other major needs, at least how I see this team. Let me go to the Chargers here at 22. I'm going to go with Vega Ioane here. This one's just an easy one. Smooth mover. Thought he looked really good at the combine too, and if you go check out 32beatwriters.com, you'll see my big board. And, just watching more Vega, the more you don't want to be too sure, right? Banking that, no matter what, this guy can't miss. That's a dangerous statement to say, but he is one of those guys where the miss rate, I can't imagine is all that high for how solid of a football player he is, specifically at the interior offensive line, where he's got it's a more skill position than people want to give credit for the offensive line, the hand placement, how you take your sets, all that stuff. There's a lot of skill involved on top of natural traits, but Vega has both in a lot of ways. So he is one of the safer, to me, prospects in this class. And this is a team that's looking to win now. They need to improve that offensive line. I think, athletically speaking, Vega just enough of a fit for the Mike McDaniel offense, but I do wonder if there's a little bit of a hybrid mixing of ideas here between Harbaugh, who's typically been gap, move the guy off the line of scrimmage, old school football, and then Mike McDaniel, who's the new age, cutting age, Shanahan, West Coast. We're going to do all that stuff. So wonder if there's a merging of ideas there, and Vega could be the perfect mix of all that. Anyways, let's get on to the Philadelphia Eagles here at 23. This one I'm going to have Avion Terrell come off the board. Yes, I know he's not the biggest guy, but look at the arm length, over 30 inches. So this guy could play outside. And frankly, for a Vic Fangio defense, his willingness to tackle and come downhill and be be a tackler, be a force in the run game, I think Vic Fangio would see that and appreciate that. And also Cooper DeJean, inside and out, Avion Terrell, inside out flexibility. Vic Fangio is this guy who wants to create a little bit of chaos. He wants to create some havoc for opposing offenses. So I think having DeJean and Terrell and all these guys move all over the field, that could be a really fun mismatch weapon. Or at least chaos creator for Vic Fangio. Plus, it's just a huge position of need. So whether it's DeJean that moves outside or you just keep Avion Terrell out there, you got to replace Adoree Jackson. He was just too often the focal point for opposing offenses to attack. So let's address that outside corner spot opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. Whether it's Terrell or DeJean, that's a big time upgrade over Adoree Jackson. And then we get back to the Cleveland Browns at 24. And my receiver one has fallen all the way down the board here at 24. He's over 190 pounds, so I think you can play him at Z. I think that kind of dispels all the slot concerns. 5'11", not 5'10". He's 5'11". So, again, I think he can play Z, not just slot. But didn't run, the 40, only did the gauntlet. Looked smooth in the gauntlet after that initial drop. That was a bit of a bummer. But nevertheless, maybe he does fall down the board just a little bit because of the measurables and because he's not an X receiver. I think that would be a travesty. And then that would line us up here. If you're the Cleveland Browns, just go take the best player available. And we're going to go get a big body receiver later on in this class. So you still have the opportunity to go get one of those big physical receivers just later on in this group. So go take best player available. Makai Lemon, a huge upgrade over Jerry Jeudy as your Z or Malachi Corley as your slot. So go make life easier for Shedeur Sanders. Makai Lemon, too good of a football player to fall to 24, but hey, that's what happened in this mock draft. Next up are the Chicago Bears, and I really went back and forth between which one of these two guys I should go with here, because in so many, and I've said this 1,000 times, but the Bears, my top two targets and candidates for them have typically been Akeem Mesidor and Cade McDonald, but now Peter Woods is here. So it's do you want to end the skid for Peter Woods, or do you want to go Cade McDonald? And I'm kind of struggling with which one I want to go with here. The other one's going to come off the board at 28. But you know what? Let's go Cade McDonald. I'm going to mix it up. In my notes, I initially had this be Peter Woods. Bears fans, let me know who you prefer. Peter Woods, try to end that slide there, or do you go with the upside play of Cade McDonald? That's a really interesting debate. Again, the other one's just going to go in the spot where the other one was going to go. So Cade McDonald, I'm going to stick to who I think their top targets would be. This is a younger, cheaper, better Andrew Billings. And I think that run defense in the middle of that defensive line could use an upgrade, plus the kind of untapped potential. What more could we get out of Cade McDonald as a pass rusher at the next level? He's a really special athlete at that size. What more can we unlock out of him? That's going to be the question next for the Chicago Bears. Buffalo Bills next up here at 26. This is an easy one. If he's here, you take Denzel Boston. This is the X receiver they just don't have. Smooth in and out of his breaks. Big catch radius. Can stretch the field vertically too. So really helps out Josh Allen in all the ways he needs it. Plus then Keon Coleman, you don't have to force a square peg into a round hole. Let's see what he looks like as a Z. I think there's a little bit more meat on the bone. Not saying he's going to have this type of breakout, but shades of Quentin Johnston last year where Johnston still plays some X, but take him out of that role. Let him play more Z. Let him be a big, fast athlete that runs away from people. I think that's a better spot there for Keon Coleman. Then you have Kincaid, Shakir that do everything that they already do. San Francisco 49ers, I have a hard time thinking Trent Williams walks, but in the event that I'm wrong, you could certainly go Caleb Lomu here, but I'm going to go Caden Proctor. I said this in the last mock too, this team has won games without Brock Purdy, and now Grant Purdy over Mac Jones all day. This team won a lot of games last year without Brandon Ayuk. We've seen this team win games without Christian McCaffrey. That's a struggle bus, but we've seen them do it. We've seen this team win games without Juwan Jennings, We saw this team win games without Fred Warner and Nick Bosa together, last year, which, again, struggle bus, but it's possible. Trent Williams is the one guy where, I don't think that team works without Trent Williams. So, frankly, I think they're going to figure out that contract and make it work for another year or two. And in that situation, perfect outcome. Caden Proctor becomes the left guard. I think it's a great scheme fit for the wide zone stuff. Similar type of impact that Dominic Pooney brought from a couple years ago as a third-round pick out of Kansas. And then you have a natural successor. Let's pass the torch from Williams to Proctor. I think that would be ideal. But in the event that I'm wrong and Trent Williams is walking, this is either Caden Proctor because you need a left tackle or it's Caleb Lomu. But I think from the run blocking side, Proctor would probably be the guy they want to lean on because they run behind Trent Williams so much. So I think Proctor would probably be their guy even more so than Lomu. But Lomu was nice at the combine. So we will get to him shortly. Houston Texans, this is where I'm going to have Peter Woods come off the board. And if it was Cade McDonald, I'm totally content with that. And frankly, I'd be even more excited about it low key if I was Houston. But I could also see where this is one of those landing spots working for a coach like DeMeco Ryans, that this is what gets Peter Woods to stay locked in, right? Felt like midway through the year, he kind of checked out a little bit. Clemson's not going where we're going. So, I'm going to kind of coast. DeMeco Ryans the guy to keep that energy level up at 100%. Plus, he's already a great run defender, but he's a really special athlete, even though he didn't test. A little solid huff, yes, but really good quick run defender with light on his feet. And then figuring out what he's going to be at the next level as a pass rusher. Yes, he never really took that step forward at Clemson, but you know what environment could really make that easier and, set him up for a lot of one-on-ones? Playing on a D-line with Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter. That sounds like it could help. So love what this does. And I also think this team, in the middle of that D-line, there were some games where that run defense got tested. Tommy Togiai, solid, but him plus Peter Woods, that re-ups and reassures that run defense a whole lot better. And plus, untapped potential there as a pass rusher. So, Caden McDonald, Peter Woods, I really struggle with which one I should send to the Bears, but whichever one went to the Bears, I was going to send the other one to the Texans. So, let me know y'all's thoughts, Texans and Bears fans. All right, pick 29. Let's go with Caleb Lomu here. And I know a lot of Rams fans are totally content letting Warren McClendon have that shot at right tackle. I think that makes sense. One, Caleb Lomu is too good to get out of the first round, so I had to find a spot for him. Two, what if we're wrong? Like, what if Warren McClendon takes a huge step backwards? Or what if he does continue to play good football, and then eventually he has to get paid? No matter what, to have a good third tackle is a good problem to have here for the Rams. And they have such a good roster that just future-proofing at one spot or the other makes a lot of sense. So Ty Simpson's not here, so you could future-proof quarterback if he was here, but you can't. So do you double down a corner? Do you go linebacker? They just extended Nate Landman. So I would rather just go ahead and take Caleb Lomu. I think he might be honestly better at right tackle the next level, just given sometimes that outside shoulder gets beat, and that's his like kind of weak spot. So moving him over to right tackle might be better for him anyways. And then if you don't have to rush him on the field, perfect. And then we'll figure out in a year or two, is he better than Warren McClendon? Is Warren McClendon going to go get a bag somewhere? We're also talking about a day 3 pick. So McClendon played well last year. Is that the scheme insulating him, or is he just a good football player? We'd find out. But if the scheme is insulating Warren McClendon and Lomu is more talented, imagine what that scheme could do in tandem with a better player, a more talented player, a day 1 player, not a day 3 talent. So not that the draft gets everything right and the order is final and everything like that, but I still don't think that right tackle is out of the question. But I'm kind of with you guys for the most part. But Loma's too good to get out of the first round, so I had to make that selection here at 29. All right, pick number 30. I'm going to go C.J. Allen. I've been going kind of D-line heavy here of late here for the Broncos, but a lot of Denver fans have been highlighted. Hey, linebacker is a pretty big position in need. A lot of guys that are free agents. We're also getting old that position, and I'm totally with you. And C.J. Allen, yes, sub 6'1", but like great instincts, great tackler, and really moves well through space. So maybe there's some untapped potential there in regards to him as a zone coverage player. So, but in a lot of ways with how he plays the run, how he moves downhill, like this is a very Vance Joseph type. So with Strenard, Singleton, both hitting free agency, Greenlaw getting up and closer to 30 years old, would be good to kind of future-proof that linebacker spot. And I do think C.J. Allen's a very Vance Joseph type. Pick 31, I'm going to go with Emmanuel Pregnon. Really impressed with his testing numbers. Again, I think of him more as a zone fit, but also showed up pretty big and pretty explosive too. So I don't think gap's out of the realm of possibility. So really, I like this here let's go ahead and lock in a guard. And I know it's not sexy or anything like that, but we lock in a guard. That moves Jared Wilson over to center. And I'm telling you, as much as Will Campbell caught the flack, Jared Wilson was as big a problem as Will Campbell, if not more so. So let's move Jared Wilson back to his natural position. Let's move Emmanuel Pregnon then. He played left guard last year for Oregon, before that at USC, coming off a really good year. Looks good at the combine. I think the late first round is certainly possible here for Pregnon. Him or Basantis could make a lot of sense here. And again, it moves Jared Wilson back to his real natural position. Seattle Seahawks, I'm going to go with Brandon Cisse. Same thing I've been saying. You have Tariq Woolen and Josh Jobe hitting free agency. They have money to spend, but bringing back both those guys doesn't feel too likely. I also thought about Emmanuel McNeil Warren here in the event they lose Kobe Bryant. So once we get to free agency and we see what pieces are gone, maybe they bring back Jobe and Woolen. That means, Emmanuel McNeil Warren's probably the pick here. If they bring back Bryant and Jobe, Woolen's gone. I can see where they try to backfill that spot and get a little extra depth at corner. But it's a great roster. So really, they have the kind of luxury of just going best player available. And I think there's an argument that's Brandon Cisse. All right, let's get to the second round here. For the New York Jets, I'm going to go with Christian Miller here. Now I'm going to stay on your pick so you guys can see what I've done previously. But we've gone linebacker, we've gone receiver. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to replace Quinnen Williams and that run defense component in the middle of that D-line with Christian Miller. Thought he looked pretty solid at the combine. Big athletic guy, moves really, really well, and really good run defender as is. And then long arms. Can we figure out that pass rush plan at the next level? That's going to be the question mark. All right, next up, Arizona Cardinals. I've been going off to tackle a lot at 3, but this worked out well where we went Arvell Reese, needed an upgrade at linebacker and pass rush, and Maxi Iheanacho, Arizona State's own. It's available there, so we'll keep him in state, and we'll future-proof that right tackle position / we'll let Jonah Williams walk in free agency, and Maxi Iheanacho, you will be our right tackle of the future. Tennessee Titans, so we went Jeremiah Love here at 4 in the first round, and we get to the second round, and KC Concepcion is available at 35, so really easy selection there. Ayumanor then plays the X. Casey becomes an awesome Z receiver. Just got to clean up the drops, get him on the jugs machine. And then Chimere DK is a slot / gadget player. You could also go try to get another third receiver in free agency if you wanted to have DK just be a gadget player. But like the yards after the catch, the field stretching ability, if you can clean up his hands, that big play ability plus Cam Ward's arm, sign me up for that all day. Let me get to the Raiders here at pick number 36. That's where I'm going to have Lee Hunter come off the board. I've been saying this in a lot of drafts where I do go D-tackle here. They have had a Christian Wilkins-size hole in the middle of that D-line, both in run defense and in pass rush. So I give you Lee Hunter, who can be your nose tackle, stop the run at a high level, but also explosive vertically out of his stance or linearly out of his stance. Comes with a pretty solid pass rush plan, good amount of power. So let's give you that Christian Wilkins replacement that you've been a couple years late to. All right, Giants are next up here at 37. And just like I was, Casey Concepcion, one of my boys of this class, top 20 player for that point. On my big board, falls to the second round. I feel the same way about Omar Cooper Jr. So frankly, yes, you still need an X receiver. So maybe you go sign Romeo Dobbs in free agency. But if Omar Cooper Jr. becomes your Z and then Neighbors becomes your slot or vice versa, sign me up for that. I want all those weapons around Jackson Dart. And frankly, the yards after the catch ability of Omar Cooper Jr., Malik Neighbors, Tyron Tracy, Cam Scattaboo, all get those guys, all those weapons around Jackson Dart, get those guys the ball in space and let's feast. Houston Texans, you're on the clock here at 38. This is when I had Chase Basantis come off the board. Also did want to note, right before recording this, they just made the trade for David Montgomery. We are going to take a running back in this mock draft for the Texans, so I'm excited to talk about that, but a little bit later on. But that being said, they also moved Juice Scruggs, so definitely have a position on that offensive line open. Chase Basantis, best pass protector in the class, fits both zone and gap because he came in at a really solid weight. So more of a zone fit for me, just watching the tape, but I think weight-wise, he comes in and could be taught and could be a fit in that gap scheme that they've kind of pivoted towards there in Houston. All right, Cleveland Browns back to the well here with the Blake Miller pick. We've gone versatile offensive lineman. Honestly, with Todd Monken coming in, Fano's kind of our Tyler Linderbaum in a lot of ways. We're like Linderbaum got to Baltimore. Next thing you know, he's pulling as center out and leading the way on a QB power for Lamar Jackson. Because if you have an athlete like Tyler Linderbaum, why the hell wouldn't you? So Fano is kind of that run game X factor, but we also need some tackles. Let's go get Blake Miller, a guy with a ton of football under his belt, really solid in pass pro, and has finally kind of added that muscle and grip strength needed to take a step forward in his game, his final year at Clemson. Kansas City Chiefs, Cassius Howell still available. Could easily go first round just because people fall in love with the pass rush potential. Little solid off, but look, the Chiefs need more ammunition. They need more firepower off the edge. At the worst, this is an upgraded Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who you did take in the first round. So worst comes to worst, this team that should get back on track, should be winning a lot of football games. Let's give you some pass rush juice in the form of Cassius Howell. Bengals are next up here at pick 41. This is where I'm going to have TJ Parker come off the board. Oh, he's the top guy, duh. TJ Parker come off the board. Edge, I still think is a position to get better at, especially with Trey Hendrickson almost certainly leaving in free agency. So big, powerful edge rusher, also a really good run defender. So he kind of fills that Sam Hubbard role a year later than they moved on from him. So TJ Parker plus Shamar Stewart. Let's see what we have there long-term at the edge spot. And frankly, I like Parker in the second round more than where they got Miles Murphy in the first round. So it's kind of funny how that works out. Two different Clemson pass rushers. All right, next up is the New Orleans Saints. You're on the clock here at 42. Let's have some fun. Hey, Tyler Shough had an impressive rookie year. What if we gave him the guy who he had 2 years ago at Clemson now, his final year at Clemson, and that was the year Chris Bell kind of broke onto the scene and became this, hey, maybe first round wide receiver to keep your eyes on. So let's go Chris Bell. You got to get him at an injury, insurance or injury discount here because if he didn't tear his ACL in November, I think he's a first round pick just off the talent. So the Saints get to buy the dip and get an X receiver for the future, yards after the catch, underneath guy to go along with Chris Olave, who hopefully can stay healthy, and he's your field stretcher, wins intermediate, wins in the deep down the field, portions of the field. So really like that's a 1-2 punch, Bell plus Olave. All right, Miami Dolphins next up at 43. This is where I'm going to go Chris Johnson. We didn't go corner, and that's typically what I've done in the first round for the Miami Dolphins. But Chris Johnson, I didn't really have the concerns about the long speed, but check that box with the 4.4 flat 40. That's last week at the combine, prototypical size, love him in both man and zone. So especially Jeff Hafley, experience playing both. I think Chris Johnson is a versatile number one corner for the future in Miami. All right, back to the Jets. We're next up here at 44. So we've gone linebacker, we've gone receiver, we've gone defensive interior. But this team also has two safeties on the block in the form of Tony Adams and Andre Sisco. So both safeties could be hitting the market. So in the event of that, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he's got to go somewhere here in the top 50. And frankly, could be a guy that sneaks into the late first round. So resetting, here's the second round thus far. I'm going to have Emmanuel McNeil-Warren be one of those two safeties, assuming one or both of those guys in New York are going to be gone from the Jets organization. All right, Ravens are next up here at 45. I'm going to go with Keith Abney. Marlon Humphrey getting a little long in the tooth. Kyle Hamilton, I assume, is going to play a lot of the slot. If they can bring back Ardeus Washington and Alohi Gilman, you then get the flexibility to do just that with Hamilton. So I wonder if they're looking for that next version of Marlon Humphrey, a guy who can play inside and out. But here with how we have it set up in the secondary, he'll be an outside corner. So I'm going to go with Keith Abney. I think he brings that inside-out versatility. And as Humphrey's cap hit gets larger and larger, and as he gets older and older, I wonder if Abney could be the guy they pass the torch to. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at the clock on 46. I really do think Anthony Hill Jr. is kind of a Todd Bowles type, but I have concerns about who he is in coverage, and that's been the weak point next to Levante David. So I'm going to go with Jake Golday, really good athlete, really good coverage player, even play some overhang for that team, the Bearcats, that is. So I wonder if that's the coverage kind of component that, hey, Servase Dennis has gotten burned in the open field too many times. Let's go draft a different type of linebacker. But I say that all said, Anthony Hill Jr. is typically guy I would have probably gravitated towards is like a Bowles type. So Bucs fans, let me know your preference, Golday versus Anthony Hill Jr. I have Golday as a better ranked player, but I'd be curious what you think scheme fit wise. All right, on to the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to have Josiah Trotter be the pick here. We're about to go on a little bit of a linebacker run here in the second round, where it's a really good linebacker class, and all these guys deserve to go somewhere here round 2. But, the middle of that Indianapolis defense, they got a couple linebackers that are up and over 28 years old, some of them with some cap hits that eventually you would like to move on from. So I wonder if they're looking for a thumper of the future. I think Josiah Trotter can definitely be that guy at pick 47. All right, that then takes us to the Atlanta Falcons. I checked this. So you have Darnell Mooney under contract for 1 more year. So I'm going to draft Jeremy Bernard, let him be the X receiver, let him battle through press coverage. Drake London's our power slot. Darnell Mooney then is a Z, not being forced to play X, which is crazy. They even asked him to do that. But like him as this field stretching Z, that makes me feel a lot better about that receiver room. And Jeremy Bernard, he's like a consummate like professional. Like that guy is the ultimate complement receiver. You have a superstar in Drake London. You're also about to pay him. So let's get a little bit cheaper at wide receiver if all possible. Bernard's a perfect complement to him. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings next up here at 49. I'm going to go Keontae Scott. And I know. Hey, TJ, whoa. You said Dylan Thielen. Like we said, Flores doesn't like playing rookies. Again, Keontae Scott, I think, is a guy you can play right away. And also Byron Murphy, over 700 snaps at outside corner last year. I say Rodgers north of like 600 snaps on the outside. So they have 2 guys that are going to have to play on the outside, and Jeff Okuda's a free agent, so you let him walk. So if those 2 become your outside corners, you need a guy to play in the slot. I know Josh Metellus has done some of that, but is there a higher ceiling than Josh Metellus? I believe there is. Keontae Scott, 6 foot, 200 pounds, elite run defender, but also a fantastic blitzer. So again, he's a rookie. I understand that's not the Flores type, but with the overhaul that's going to take place in that secondary, assuming Harrison Smith retires, you need to replace him. There's also a lot better ceiling to chase in that secondary. So we already have 2 guys who could play on the outside. Let's go add Keontae Scott as that like chaos nickel corner. Just let Brian Flores, let him run around all over the field. Would love to see that. So, and I promise it's the last secondary pick for the Minnesota Vikings today's video. So don't yell at me. All right, pick number 50. I'm going to give the Detroit Lions Connor Lew. Grant Glasnow to me is a little bit better of a guard than he is a center. So I'm going to go with Connor Lew, and also you felt the impact of like not having Frank Ragnow on this team. So Lew is coming off an injury, but he's the best center in this class to me, cleared away, especially when you look at this as like a 2-year sample size. So let's go try to find that Frank Ragnow replacement. And frankly, like a year ago, like before we got into the season, like summer scouting, that to me was like the upside of like where Connor Lew could have gone, like 17 overall to the Lions in the first round as like a Ragnow replacement, Ragnow type of center prospect. So to me, it does make a lot of sense situationally as well. All right, Carolina Panthers, you're next up here at 51. Going back to the wall, this is a fit that I really like a lot. Zion Young, have him and Nick Scorton be your early down edge rushers. Love what Zion Young is, a run defender, plus is a heavy-handed power rusher to complement the likes of Nick Scorton and Prince the Uman Mielen. Green Bay Packers are next up at 52. I'm going to go to Devin Moore here, big, tall, athletic corner. I think they finally need to spend a premium pick, and since they don't have a first-round pick, second round, so as premium as they got this year at the cornerback position, get an infusion of outside talent. Right, they took Javon Bullard in the top 100 a couple of years ago, and that's great. He's a good football player, like him as a nickel, but got to get some better talent on the outside. So I think Devin Moore, big, tall, athletic guy, solid 42 at 4.5 flat. I think that's a guy to target there in the second round for Green Bay. Back to the Pittsburgh Steelers here at 53. And I know a lot of Steelers fans don't like this fit. And frankly, I think you're insane. If you don't like D'Angelo Pons as a player, you haven't watched the tape. I'm sorry. I think you haven't watched the tape. But a scrappy run defender who's also got great instincts in both in zone and man coverage. So you plug him into the nickel. Hopefully we can bring back Asante Samuel Jr. Then Asante Samuel Jr., Joey Porter Jr. on the outside. Pons as a guy who wants to be an enforcer in the run game, can be used as a blitzer. Whether it's man or zone, he will hold his own in coverage. So yeah, he's 5'9", 182. It's not awesome, but Mike Hilton wasn't the biggest guy either. So if you're hating on that pick right at 52 or 53, I'm sorry you haven't watched the film. Philadelphia Eagles are next up here at 54. I'm going to go with Max Clare. This has been a spot where just doing 2-round mock drafts, I've been hesitant to take tight end. But considering what I do with this team at 68 and 98, I'm comfortable with it right here, assuming Dallas Goedert's going to be gone. And also, like, do you want to pay him what he's going to potentially get on the open market? We'll see what happens with A.J. Brown, too. Maybe they decide to go receiver and they can pay Goddard and keep him around. But in the event that Goddard's gone, Max Clare bulked up. He was able to play in line a lot last year, played a complimentary role for Ohio State. So a lot of ways, I think his experience last year with the Buckeyes makes him kind of the guy the Eagles could target here because, Goddard wasn't, pass catcher one for that offense either. They're looking for a guy to block and be a compliment. I think Max Clare's proven he can do that. All right, Chargers, you're next up at 55. I'm going to go with Big Citrus. Been a little bit since we had him go in the second round. And, I've been thinking about this, a couple of years ago, and this is a bigger discussion point, maybe something I'll do on my personal YouTube channel. It's just like a thought discussion. A couple of years ago, I'd say probably like 5 to 10 years ago, what the big narrative was like the biggest cheat code you could have in the NFL, and this is still a huge cheat code, is the rookie contract quarterback. If you can get a rookie contract quarterback and it hits, you put yourself in Super Bowl contention. And I think that's true. And then like 3 years ago, I think we would have said, hey, if you can rush with 4 and just 4, that's the biggest cheat code. It'd be great to have a rookie contract quarterback, but we've seen teams now with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're paying Patrick Mahomes, and their best, and the 49ers, they're paying their guy, but like they can get to the Super Bowl when they can rush with 4 and win with 4. And we saw that this last year with Seattle too. But I also think what Seattle's kind of highlighted is the ability to live in nickel, both with like a nickel corner like Nicky Manwari, who's a great run defender. That's a cheat code, but also like a front four that is stout against the run and allows you to keep a second safety back is immensely, that's a huge cheat. So I wonder if we start to get to that narrative to where like teams start, that's like the thing to copy. Last year it was like, oh, Philadelphia, and they have all that depth on the defensive line that you can always win with 4. We're going to load up our D-line and have a ton of depth. I wonder if this year's lesson that people are learning is like, hey, we've got to be able to live in nickel. Like that's just what we got to do. So I wonder if Dante Corleone, Big Citrus, they get a little bit of a bump because you're not drafting them for their pass rush upside. You're drafting them because they're elite run defenders. They're going to 2-gap. They're going to hold the point of attack. They'll hold up against double teams. They're going to make it to where you can keep that second safety deep on the back end. So I do wonder if they get a little bit of a boost in that. And the Chargers were missing Poona Ford last year. So Dominic Orange, Dante Corleone kind of has a similar body type, 6'1", natural leverage, but he comes with the blood clots concern. So decided to go Big Citrus here to give this team that bit. And I know Jamari Caldwell could do that, but he played a little bit more 3-tech than nose tackle last year. So let's say he's a 3-tech. Dominic Orange then becomes the nose for the Los Angeles Chargers. And then sticking with the interior defensive line group, I just love this fit. This is a team that utilizes stunts and twists a lot. Also, they could use some more pass rush juice in the middle of that defensive line. Grayson Halton to the Jags, I adore that fit. And letting him on those stunts and twists play off of Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen, I think it'd be a great outcome for this team, but it'd also be an elite landing spot for Grayson Halton, who the more I watch, the more I love. All right, pick 57, Chicago Bears, you're on the clock. With, the news of them letting Tremaine Edmonds go ahead and explore a trade, I do expect him to be moved on from. They can also cut him, and he's only like $2.5 million dead cap. And especially with the combine J-Rod just posted, we were kind of concerned. Is he a good athlete? Is he an okay athlete? Where's he at? He put up awesome numbers, including the single best 3-cone of any linebacker. So change of direction skills, checked all the boxes there. Plus the tape is fantastic. Natural playmaker. So in the event they move on from Tremaine Edmonds, I like the idea of Jacob Rodriguez there at 57. His stock, it's amazing that he kind of started this year as like, I'm pounding the table for him in the 4th round to like, I just mocked him 57 overall, the Chicago Bears. What a year for Jacob Rodriguez. All right, 49ers are back on the clock. They're here at 58. So looking at their safety position, specifically free safety, I think is kind of a weakness. And with Raheem Morris, after spending 2 years in Atlanta having Jesse Bates, plus last year having Bates and Xavier Watts, I wonder if he's looking for a playmaking free safety. And Kamari Ramsey last year at USC played a lot more in the slot. But if you go back 2 years ago where he played free safety, there's a lot to like there. So I'm going to say a little bit of a projection here, but they go Kamari Ramsey. He becomes a free safety. And then you have Malik Mustafa and those types of safeties kind of play closer to the line of scrimmage and in the box. Even Jair Brown, I liked more as a box safety slot type. So I think Kamari Ramsey frees up everyone else to do what role they're better fit for. Houston Texans here at 59. This is where I'm going to have Anthony Hill Jr. come off the board. And again, earlier we could have easily, if Anthony Hill Jr. then becomes the pick, Golday, I would be very interested in here. Or I maybe go Golday at 57 and Rodriguez becomes pick at 59. So it's just really moving some pieces around the board. But again, another guy where it's just like, I want to see what D'Amico Ryans can do to challenge Peter Woods. I want to see what D'Amico Ryans can do developing the talent that is Anthony Hill Jr. Awesome downhill linebacker, freak athlete. Can we find that next tier? Can we make him a 3-down player? And can we improve that coverage side? If there's a guy to do it, it's D'Amico Ryans, former rookie of the year and former linebacker. So I would love to see that kind of fit. All right, Bills, you're on the clock here at 60. Kind of doubling down on my thinking point here for the Chargers. You're a contender. You need to be able to live in too high. And that has typically been the Bills' MO, right? With Sean McDermott, want to play with too high safeties. That might change a little bit with Jim Leonard coming from Denver, where they played a lot more single high than what the Bills have typically done. But either way you spin it, whether you want to play more too high, you need a better run defense of nose tackle, because Ed Oliver, that's not really his game. You need a true 2-gapping, high-level nose defender, nose tackle, run defender to be able to live that 2-safety life. Also, if they want to play more single high, this team doesn't have that DJ Jones that Jim Leonard and that Denver defense had last year as a true nose tackle. So either way you spin it, I think it's a position of need here for the Bills. I'm going to go Dante Corleone, plays with great natural leverage. It just comes down to the medical and the blood clots. Can this guy play for you for 5 to 8, maybe 6 to 8 years to make it worthwhile here at 60? And I'll let the team doctors be the deciding factor there. But otherwise, I think he fits a very valuable role there in Buffalo. All right, the Rams are next up here at 61. With Cam Curl hitting free agency, I just wanted to be able to, just in case he leaves, goes gets a bag somewhere else, or maybe they're looking to overhaul that spot. I'm going to go with AJ Halsey. I think he's a little bit better of a coverage player than Cam Curl. And Halsey's a little, kind of reckless sometimes coming downhill, playing it aggressive, and can be a little loose with the tackling, if you will, just because he is coming downhill too hot. But that being said, I think you can kind of correct that and fix that. That's a coaching point to me. And if they can coach that up, then I think he brings a lot of the strengths that Cam Curls does on top of just more natural playmaking ability. And at 215 pounds, also a really interesting body type. I'd be very curious about the deployment of AJ Halsey here in Los Angeles. All right, pick 62 is going to be the Denver Broncos. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. Yes, I know they took RJ Harvey in the second round last year, but he's the big play guy and the receiving back. Jadarian Price brings big playability, but he's also a return threat, which you wouldn't have to worry about here with Marvin Mims. But who could be the between the tackle, good vision, good burst, running up the middle type of guy with RJ Harvey being the outside, the tackles, and pass catcher. Jadarian Price only had 6 catches last year. I think that could be a really fun 1-2 punch. Price between the tackles, kind of the enforcer, early down stuff. Harvey also can do a lot of that stuff, but running outside the tackles, being more of the pass catcher. I think that would be a really fun 1-2 punch. So Broncos fans, let me hear your thoughts about going second round running back once again and what you think Price off of RJ Harvey. And we live in this day and age where even if RJ Harvey is your number one back, it's committees around the league. So no matter what, 18 to 20 touches for Harvey, 12 to 15 for Price. I don't think that's crazy at all. New England Patriots here at pick number 63. With Mac Hollins, I think that's a position you can get younger, cheaper, better at. So I'm going to go with Chris Brazzell here. Sub 4.4 speed. I did think about Malachi Fields here, but with Drake May's arm, I want a guy who can get open deep down the field and, just a little bit better 40 time for Brazzell than Malachi Fields. So I am using that as a little bit of a tiebreaker here in the post-combine mock draft. So big, tall, fast, athletic receiver in Chris Brazzell, but it's way more hip fluidity, change of direction skills than Dante Thornton, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt. Runs a more nuanced route tree as well. So this is not just another one of these Tennessee receivers. This is a way more diverse bag here. Him as the X, Kyle Williams is the Z, and then, Pop Douglas, Booty, whoever is going to be that slot. I love how it moves the pieces around in that wide receiver room. And then maybe they do bring back Steph Diggs. I've heard that they're moving on from that, but maybe he does come back and he plays in the slot. All right, to the Seattle Seahawks here at 64. I'm going to go back to the well. I really do like the fit of Keelan Rutledge, right guard for Georgia Tech, solid athlete, solid tester. So plug him in there at right guard and replace Anthony Bradford. Let's double down on the investment made last year with Gray Zabel with another player who could help our run game and make another similar impact. Maybe not quite the first round level of success with Gray Zabel, but another really good football player and just trying to keep that offensive line of strength. All right, let's get to the third round here. And at pick 65, I'm going to have the Arizona Cardinals take Jonah Coleman. I'm not completely out on Jonah Coleman. I know the long speed's a little concern for some people, but really shifty runner, light on his feet, 5'9", 228. Love that bowling ball build and enough pass catching ability. With James Conner, you're probably moving on from that contract. I could see Trey Benson plus Jonah Coleman being a nice little 1-2 tandem in the backfield. Tennessee Titans, they're going to move on from L'Jarius Sneed, so corner's a massive need. And I think Julian Neal, 6'2", solid 40 time, the best vertical jump of any of the corners. Maybe it was the best broad, but I'm pretty sure it was the best vertical. So explosive out of his stance, provides a skill set that I just don't really think here. And also a body type I don't think is there in Tennessee right now. All right, pick 67. This one's a layup. We already took Mendoza at 1, so let's go get him the number 1 and X receiver at Indianapolis. At Indiana. I don't know where Indianapolis came from, but his number 1 receiver from Indiana. You can say that was Omar Cooper, but his X receiver from Indiana. And I think that's just like an X that they don't really have. Even Dante Thornton, I think we could just move him across the formation and we can find a way to use that speed somewhere else. Speed plays at all 3 spots on the receiver spot. So let's go partner up and let's double down on that chemistry they already have. All right, Philadelphia Eagles, you are now on the clock here at 68. And one of the hot names within the draft community right now, Billy Scrouth. You have Tyler Steen, who could be replaced. The PFF grades aren't terrible, but it feels like Eagles fans feel like there's a higher ceiling there at right guard. And also you have Landon Dickerson. He's decided he's going to come back, but once retirement enters the mind, it's like, okay, well, how long do we have this guy really long term? So at either of those guard spots, I think Billy Scrouth will eventually be a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. Houston Texans at 69. Again, I know, and I talked about it just a minute ago, they just made the trade for what's his name? David Montgomery from the Lions. Give up Juice Scruggs in a 5th round pick. But David Montgomery, like he's getting up there at age, and yes, he's a physical type of back. But what if we got a big physical back who also runs a 4.33? That's what I'm doing here. Mike Washington Jr., one of the absolute big surprises from the combine. I knew he could move, man, but I was thinking low 4.4s, not low 4.3s. That was insane. So have him in addition to Woody Marks as the outside runner, the pass catcher with David Montgomery. I think Montgomery would actually be a great mentor for Mike Washington Jr. as he makes the step to the next level. So I would love that. Plus, it future-proofs the position. It gives you Marks plus Washington for the next 5 years. How do you not get excited about that? Cleveland Browns here at pick number 70. Since we've gotten Makai Lemon, I did think about going X receiver here. So I did contemplate Malachi Fields, but you know what? And I know earlier I said we're going to get an X receiver, so I misspoke there. But with Cedric Tillman, between him and Jerry Jeudy, let's see where the Tillman thing goes. I'm a little bit more curious about that. And you know who I'm definitely more curious than Malachi Corley on? Zachariah Branch. I'm not the world's biggest Zachariah Branch fan, but I would much rather have Zachariah Branch on my football field than Malachi Corley. And frankly, the role that Corley plays, I think Branch is just a much better prospect for that. So I'm going to go Malachi Corley I'm going to go with Zachariah Branch to replace Malachi Corley. We've already gone Makai Lemon to replace Jerry Jeudy. That leaves Cedric Tillman as our X, but let's see where that goes. And then for the Washington Commanders, I did think about going defense here, but if Malachi Fields is there, I think that does add a lot to that wide receiver room. Fields becomes your sacrificial X, big body, contested catch, over the middle of the field type of guy. You move Terry McLaurin then to the Z or the slot. Either one could make a lot of sense. But if you bring back Deebo Samuel, T-Mac becomes your Z, and then Deebo then in the slot. I like how it moves those guys down, not necessarily down the rung when it comes to like volume and like who's going to get more targets, but like into a role that better fits their skill set. So hopefully that makes sense. And Malachi Fields is kind of what they have tried to do with who's the old Texans wide receiver who has a hard time staying healthy. Oh, that kills me that the name's escaping me. But anyways, we got to move on. All right, Cincinnati Bengals. Center has been a big position of need and something I've been wanting them to address for a few years now. Ted Karras, I believe, is a free agent. If not, he's a guy they could move on from and save some good money against the cap, like $4.5 million. So I'm going to draft him Sam Heck. Good zone blocking scheme fits, and I think just gets younger, better, cheaper at that center position. New Orleans Saints here on the clock at 73. We haven't gone interior offensive line yet, so I'm going to go back to that well. And I'm going to go with Jennings Dunker. I don't often show Jennings a whole lot of love here, but I thought okay testing numbers. I do like him much better as a guard, so I'm going to go with him here to be a option for a Cesar Ruiz replacement there at right guard. Maybe Ruiz can move over to the left guard spot because I do think he's ultimately the better of the two guards that's currently slated to start. So let's move him over to left guard, and we'll show Jennings Dunker a little bit of love here. I do think he's a better fit for a zone run blocking scheme, so I can see where Kellen Moore sees him as a guy that works for that scheme. All right, Kansas City Chiefs here at 74. That's when I have Ted Hurst come off the board. Another really good step in the testing process, the testing draft cycle here for Ted Hurst. Liked him at the Senior Bowl. Good 40 time, showcased the ability to stretch the field. So we saw at the Senior Bowl, like, hey, I can hang with this competition. And then at the combine, it's like, hey, yeah, these numbers are awesome, and I'm a big, tall X receiver who can stretch the field. So yeah, draft me. So that's the type of receiver that the Chiefs just don't have. That X, line them up in the line of scrimmage, let them battle through press. So I think Ted Hurst is the exact receiver they're looking for. All right, back to the Miami Dolphins. Got a good run of third round picks here for the Dolphins. So kicking things off here at 75, I'm going to go with Gabe Akis. I've heard that, maybe Bradley Chubb is a disposable piece, him or Chop Robinson, what they're going to do, try to get a more four-man front. Akis has both played as a stand-up rusher and with his hand in the dirt. So whatever ends up happening there, both moving on for pieces existing or a different schematic shift for that defense, I think Akis fits in no matter what there in Miami. All right, back to the Pittsburgh Steelers here at 76. Haven't gone receiver yet. Definitely need to get another pass catcher because right now it's kind of DK Metcalf and no one else. I'm going to go with Skylar Bell, 10-inch hands, coming off a year with over 100 catches at UConn. I love guys with a ton of volume, so I'm going to go with Skylar Bell to be the Z receiver for this team, and then we're going to draft a slot a little bit later on in the third round. All right, back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one's kind of for Trevor Sikkema. Cade Otton's going to be a free agent. So Eli Stowers coming in at 240 pounds makes me wonder. He's been playing tight end for like 3 to 4 years now, and now he's finally kind of hitting tight end weight. Kind of shades of Veranda Gadsden, but like we like the prospect a little bit more, and the body type's a little bit further along than Gadsden was. So could he just be a true inline tight end? I wonder. Is the weight there? But also, could they just replace Cade Otton and get cheaper at that position? I wonder if that's the move there. I was going to go Sam Roush specifically because I just think the run blocking is awesome and like an easy guy to draft here and get really easy production from immediately. And like you have to think Mike Evans, assuming he's back, you have Chris Godwin, you have Emeka Egbuka, you have Jalen McMillan. Like there's enough pass catching volume, but decided to go with Stowers because one, post-combine mock, he tested great. So I think in future mocks, that might be Sam Roush. But Bucs fans, let me know your preference. Eli Stowers or Sam Roush here in the third round. Colts are next on the clock here at 78. I'm going to go with Darrell Jackson Jr. He's a little high cut, but he's got really long limbs, and he's a really good run defender. So you also get to send him to Indianapolis, where they have another tall, long-limbed defensive lineman that he gets to work with in the form of DeForest Buckner. So in a lot of ways, really good mentor-mentee setup, and Grover Stewart you can cut and save $10+ million against the cap. So to backfill that run defense, I'll give you Darrell Jackson Jr. here in the middle of the third. All right, back to the Atlanta Falcons now at pick 79. Really, this is just kind of like best play available. R. Mason Thomas probably fell a little bit further than I should have let him. But also Leonard Floyd's a free agent, and James Pierce, I don't know. I don't want to speculate too hard. I'm not a lawyer, but like kind of feels like he's played his last down in the NFL. So I'm going to go with R. Mason Thomas to replace that skill set and get some more pass rush juice. Even if they do eventually get him back, it's probably not going to be a whole lot for next season. And with Leonard Floyd hitting free agency, pass rush is still a spot where they can get better. So we'd love to see Jeff Ulbrich with Jalen Walker and R. Mason Thomas. It's a whole lot of juice on the edge. Baltimore Ravens here at pick number 80. I'm going to go with Dejon Stribling. I've been looking to give this team an X receiver for a few years now. I think Stribling could be that X. He's also an awesome blocker. So for this team that has Lamar Jackson, has Derrick Henry, wants to win on the ground, I do think his blocking skill set brings a whole lot of value there. DeAndre Hopkins getting along the two. Bateman's probably better Z than he is an X. So I think Stribling makes everything kind of fall in the right place. Next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and here at 81, I'm going to go with Zakee Wheatley. Safety has been a position I've been looking to attack a lot in these mock drafts, and I think he's a big-time upgrade over Andrew Wingard, who is also set to hit free agency. Next up, Minnesota Vikings here at 82. Center is the position we've neglected thus far in the mock draft. Have a hard time thinking Ryan Kelly is going to play, both from a cap Viking situation, but also his long-term health. So I'm going to go with Brian Parker II. Got to see him play center at the Shrine Bowl, making this translation a whole lot easier. I think he's a really good scheme fit for KOC and comes at a big position of need. All right, Carolina Panthers here at 83. I have been saying all draft cycle, their linebackers are brutal in coverage. Well, what if I gave you basically a slot corner / safety to fix up that coverage side? Yes, he's a little small, get a little washed out, but we can figure that out. We can hide Kyle Lewis. The coverage upside he will bring over the guys they had like last year in Christian Roseboom and Chris Barnes and whatnot. I think Kyle Lewis's impact on the coverage side will be much felt in Carolina. All right, then we get to the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go back to the interior defensive line and go with Devontae Capehart. Probably as early as we could see him come off the board. He's been a rotational guy at Clemson, but off the charts testing this last week at Indianapolis, and he is a good run defender. So I wonder if the Packers look at him as like the run defense reinforcements they need. And he's a little bit older. That goes against what they typically drafted, but also the team that drafted Devontae White at 24 years old. So never say never. Back to the Pittsburgh Steelers here at pick 85. This one I could go in one of two directions. Deion Burks or Antonio Williams. If we're going off my rankings, it'd be Antonio Williams. I think he's just the better pro at the next level. But this is the post-combine mock, so let's have some fun. 4.33 40 for Deion Burks, guy who's had all the talent in the world. He's just battled some injuries, and I think it's kind of struggled to find the right usage at the college level. So maybe the next level, Mike McCarthy's had good success with a Oklahoma receiver out of the slot. Maybe he can work his magic again with Deion Burks. Not just say that he's going to be CeeDee Lamb. Certainly not saying that. Pick number 86 here for the LA Chargers. Another really good step in the test process. I don't know why I can't say that. For Deni Dennis Sutton. Liked him at the Senior Bowl, but showcased a big athletic body with long arms. And again, the athleticism was really good to see on display this last week at Indy. And, this Chargers team has Tuli Tuipulotu, Odafe Owe, and Khalil Mack all hitting free agency. So we've gotten an interior piece, but we might need to find a replacement there at edge. So Deni Dennis Sutton, who's been a good run defender at Penn State, challenging body type to block from a pass rush standpoint. Could see the Chargers really liking that. Let's get to pick number 87. Miami Dolphins. I've been hearing a lot of buzz that Minkah Fitzpatrick's probably going to be shipped out, big cap hit, or they just decide to move on from him and just deal with a dead cap hit. In the event that happens, Jeff Hafley, the guy who brought a big part of why Xavier McKinney ended up in Green Bay to play true over-the-top free safety. I'll give you one of the best true over-the-top free safeties in this class in Genesis Smith, another really standout tester from the combine as well. Did everything but like the 40. I don't think he ran a 40, but the vertical and the broad were explosive. 6'2". Love to see it. Jacksonville Jaguars, you're back on the clock here at 88. I'm going to go Jalen Farmer, another guy who tested really, really well. And I've been thinking of him more as a gap scheme guy, but honestly, with the athletic testing, zone blocking might not be out of the realm of possibility either. And then this would basically replace Patrick McCarry as one of their slated guards to start. And he becomes this ultimate Swiss Army knife. He can play tackle in a pinch, but really he's like Robert Hainsey competition there for center or a backup guard for this team. So I like getting Jalen Farmer there at 88. All right, back to the Chicago Bears. On the clock here at 89. I'm going to go with Derek Moore. We haven't gone edge rusher yet. I do think they could use some additional juice there. Austin Booker has definitely gotten his body type along the way, but still could use a third edge. So at the worst here at 89, if Derek Moore is like your quick first step, explosive first step, speed to power guy as your third edge rusher, I think that's a good guy to throw into that rotation. All right, once again, back to the Miami Dolphins here at 90. Let's have some fun. The Tua Tagovailoa thing, we don't know what's going to go on, but could they draft another left-handed quarterback who maybe comes with a higher ceiling in the form of Cole Payton? Big arm, love the vertical and broad. Didn't run a 40, but if he did, would have really good a 40 time there, no doubt about it. So actually, now that I say that, did he run a, hold on, I'm going to look this up real quick. Did he run a 40? 4.56. So you know who else ran a 4.56 and was 85th percentile? Tyler Shuck, and he got drafted in the second round. So that's very interesting. So let's go with Cole Payton there to stick with the left-handed quarterback in Miami, but with one who moves a lot better than Tua, is bigger than Tua, and has a stronger arm. So that's very, very interesting fit. Here at 91, this is probably as early as we would see him come off the board, but I'm going to go with Aiden Fisher. You know, again, with Jim Leonard coming over, could he be looking for a thumping linebacker that's just not presently on the roster in Buffalo? And I think he could. Aiden Fisher's also an underrated athlete, too. Like, the man moves pretty well, considering you kind of look at him and you think, oh, white linebacker, and you think you know who he is, but he moves better than that. Let's get to pick number 92 here for the San Francisco 49ers. Brandon Thompson has not come off the board, and both as a satellite player on those crossing routes, with his speed, he's the fastest player at the combine. His speed on those crossing routes, good Lord, let's watch out. I would just love to see that type of an athlete getting schemed up by Kyle Shanahan. I mean, let's go see what happens there. Could be a guy where Deshaun Stribling is your Juwan Jennings, replacement, but let's go for the upside play. Ricky Pearsall hopefully stays healthy, and then you have an abundance of speed with Brandon Thompson coming into the building. Pick number 93 for the LA Rams. Let's have some fun here. One of the guys who was a big talking point coming out of the combine was Drew Aller. Didn't do any of the testing, but he's big. He's got a good weight at 228, and he threw. And against air, Drew Aller always looks good against air. And if there's a place to fix up his mechanics and his footwork, working with Sean McVay, sitting behind Matt Stafford, another big, strong-armed quarterback, could be interesting. So Rams fan, I didn't give you Ty Simpson in the first round, which it feels like most Rams fans really don't want to see happen at 13 or 29. Would you be okay with Drew Aller at 93? Big, tall, big-armed quarterback. Could Sean McVay and Matt Stafford make it work? If there's a place to make it work with Drew Aller, I think the Rams have got to be the number one spot. All right, Denver Broncos here at 94 as we start to wind things down. I did this in the last mock, but I did in the second round. I'm going to go with Michael Trigg. Look, they brought in Evan Ingram, and he's basically a glorified slot. So if there's a team that's willing to look past the unwillingness to block, to be completely honest with you, with Michael Trigg, I think it's the Denver Broncos as a Evan Ingram replacement. All right. New England Patriots next up at 95. This team, especially if Caleb Von Chason gets a bag, they just don't want to match that contract, could use an extra pass rusher. And Malachi Lawrence, long arms, looked really fluid in the hoop drills as well. I thought he was a standout from the first day at the combine. So getting a little bit of extra pass rush juice. He might just be a DPR, but I also could see a world where he just replaces Caleb Von Chason. Then we get back to the Seattle Seahawks at 96. Linebacker is a spot where they could use another body. You have Drake Thomas hitting free agency. And look, Torian York's a little short, but here at 96, I think my risk appetite is there for it. And he is a smart, instinctual, pretty solid athlete, too, at the position. And if there's a guy who can make the undersized linebacker work, Mike Mack can do no wrong. So I'm going to have him come off the board here at pick number 96. Then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to go with one of my favorite running backs in this class. Emmett Johnson's higher ranked than Seth McGowan. And I know there's a lot of fans for Emmett Johnson, but 4.56, I'd rather go with the guy who runs, in the 4.4s. It, to me, also was one of the best testers in both the vertical and the broad. The explosiveness is on display for Seth McGowan. I also think he's a better pass protector than Emmett Johnson. Johnson's probably a more explosive pass catcher, but McGowan is no slouch as a pass catcher either. So Seth McGowan plus Jordan Mason, his second year in that scheme, I like that as a 1-2 punch in the backfield. Could also go Emmett Johnson, so I don't want to besmirch that for his fans and those Cornhusker fans out there as well. Eagles here at 98. We're actually going to have a little bit of a run on edge rushers the next three picks. I do think they could use a heavy-handed edge rusher to basically ensure Brandon Graham doesn't come out of retirement. So let's go get him a 6'5". I think he came in at like 275 instead. But PFF will update those numbers. But big, powerful edge rusher in Anthony Lucas to make sure, again, Brandon Graham doesn't come out of retirement. Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to go edge here, but it's unless we could go outside corner and go get someone like that. Let me just double check. There's no one here. That's really interesting. No, it's okay. I'm going to go back to the edge wall because I think a lot of buzz about us moving Nick Herbig. I think that's crazy. I don't think we move Nick Herbig. If we're moving an edge rusher, it's definitely Highsmith because he's 29 years old and he's got a bigger cap hit than Herbig. And I think an edge tandem of TJ Watt because he's an all-time legacy player. We're not moving TJ Watt. Plus Nick Herbig, that works. And then you have Jack Sawyer as a third. So you don't have to even go edge here because you already did draft Jack Sawyer, who flashed for us last year. But I'm going to do it. So here at 99, another guy who's been getting a ton of love lately, Kieran Crawford, another guy who looked really athletic at the combine. So go with him in the event. I do think Alex Highsmith does get traded. So trading a third round, trading Alex Highsmith. Actually, I think we took Highsmith in the second round. I'm getting too deep in the weeds here. But if we trade Highsmith, another edge rusher would make a lot of sense. And I could see us, with our ability to develop the guys, I could see us taking a swing of the bat on the athlete that is Kieran Crawford. And then we get to the Jags here at 100, and I'm going to go with Joshua Josephs. I think he's a good enough player to go top 100. And I think that third edge rush position, Dennis Gardeck's a free agent. Maybe they bring back Arden Key, after his tenure in Tennessee, you bring him back to Jacksonville. But that third edge rush spot, yes, I know we did draft Grayson Holton for more pass rush juice, but in the event that you collapse Trayvon Walker inside, imagine this, and also Eric Armstead, like TBD on what's going on with that contract. So let's just take him out of the picture because cap casualty is certainly possible there. To have a four-man front that includes Joshua Josephs and Josh Hines Allen on the outside with Holton and Trayvon Walker rushing from the inside sounds freaking awesome. So I'm going to go with Joshua Josephs. And again, I think good enough football player to go top 100. Also did think about Sam Roush there, just, Brandon Strange, good blocker, but to have two of those guys, that could be a really interesting weapon for Liam Cohen. And in the event Brenton Strange misses more time like he did last year, that's certainly a possibility. But guys, at long last, I've made it through all 100 selections. Now I'm going to go to the bank and or go meet at a lawyer's office, I guess, turn in the check that I got from the bank and go close on a house. So wish me luck. That's going to be an exciting rest of my day there. But hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm scrolling through so you can see all 100 selections one more time. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, or if you want to have a conversation in my Twitter DMs, you can hit me up. My ad is right below my box. Who went too high? Who went too low? Who's your favorite squad? And what'd you think of the haul that I gave your team? Let me hear any and all NFL draft thoughts. Let me know who you think the biggest winners of the combine were. Give me a top 5. Single biggest winner, regardless of position. Who were the 5 biggest winners out of the combine? Let me hear those thoughts down below as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed this mock. We'll have more Fixing the Franchises coming out tomorrow. And then we'll be getting into more updated position rankings. Running back is the next group to hit. So now that we're through the combine, that will be on the horizon here very soon. But hope you guys enjoyed the 3-rounder. And until next time, we are signing off.